How you doing, fight fans? EJ Boxing Live here, and we're still on it again. Caribbean's greatest fighters of the decade. So we're going with Kid Chocolate, not Kid Quillen. Everyone knows of recently. We're talking about Kid Chocolate, the original Kid Chocolate from Cuba. And he ruled from the 1930s to the 1940s. So we're gonna get some information about him, and I'll give you my take on that. But he was a special fighter at the time, and I think this is prior towards Fidel Castro coming and take over Cuba. So it was a very hot time, very good time in Cuba for Cuban athletes to come from Cuba, go to America and make a name for themselves. So sit back, relax, and hope you guys enjoy.
Cuban boxer Eligio Kid Chocolate Sardinas was the first Cuban world champion in the history of boxing. From the late 1920s to the late 1930s, he was one of the most popular fighters in New York. He was noted for his speed and his fast punches. Kid Chocolate was born in Havana, Cuba, on January 6, 1910, and first began fighting as a boy. When he worked as a newspaper seller and had to defend his sales turf from other boys. After winning an amateur boxing tournament that was sponsored by the newspaper La Noche, the newspaper's sports editor, Luis Gutierrez, became his manager. Gutierrez was not well versed in boxing, so he and Sardinas studied the sport by watching films of famous fighters. In the Encyclopedia of World Boxing Champions, Gutierrez commented, "When the kid first came to me, neither he nor myself knew anything much about boxing. We figured the best thing to do was study the methods of the masters." The first fight they studied was the Gans-Nelson fight while the film was playing in Havana movie houses. They viewed it every day, noting how Gans used his left hand. After watching it, they went to the gym, where Sardinas practiced left-handed techniques. For the next 8 years, Sardinas continued to study films, learning from the masters. As an amateur featherweight, Kid Chocolate won 100 consecutive fights in the Cuban leagues. Among these were 86 knockouts. He became a professional in 1928, winning another 28 consecutive knockouts. In August of that year, he moved to the United States. There Kid Chocolate extended his winning streak by 13. Including 8 knockouts, giving him a total of 141 consecutive wins and 122 knockouts. His fights moved from small clubs to huge venues, including Madison Square Garden. By 1929, he was ranked the top featherweight fighter by The Ring, a boxing publication. In 1930, Kid Chocolate fought Hall of Fame boxer Jackie "Kid" Berg at the Polo Grounds, in front of a crowd of 40,000. Although Berg weighed almost 10 pounds more than Sardinas, Kid Chocolate kept pounding, slamming uppercuts into Berg's head. Eventually Kid Chocolate tired, and Berg won by a narrow margin. It was Sardinas' first defeat. On July 15, 1931, in Philadelphia, Kid Chocolate fought Benny Bass, knocking out Bass in the 7th round to win the junior lightweight title. At the time, he weighed 126 pounds and was 5 feet 6 inches tall. In 1932, Kid Chocolate lost a rematch with Berg, but came back to challenge Fidel La Barba for the world featherweight title. Kid Chocolate and La Barba fought 3 times. Kid Chocolate won 2 of these fights. Of the 2 wins, the most important occurred in New York City on December 9, 1932. Because Sardinas had beaten the standing champion, on that date he was crowned world featherweight champion by the New York Boxing Commission. He thus became the first Cuban in boxing history to hold the world championship title. Sardinas kept the title for a year and 17 days, beating 7 challengers and ultimately losing to Frankie Clarke. On December 26, 1933, Clarke knocked him out in the 7th round in Philadelphia, taking the title. Clarke remained the champion until 1949. Although Kid Chocolate never took the championship title again, he continued fighting, mostly against second-rate competitors, until he retired in 1938. In his decade-long career in the United States, he won 145 of 161 fights with 64 knockouts, one of the best records in featherweight history. He was counted out only twice in 161 fights. Kid Chocolate was famous in his day. But like many boxers of that era, he was cheated by dishonest managers, and he also spent a great deal of his money on nightlife and good times. After retiring, he moved to Cuba, where he ran a gym. As he grew older and his money ran out, he suffered from poverty and alcoholism, troubles common to out-of-work boxers of his time. In the New York Times, Ira Bergow reported that he lived quietly, out of the public view, and subsisted on a pension provided by the Cuban government. Bergow quoted boxing expert Nat Fleischer, who said, "He was sickly, bent over, and he walked with a cane. It's like he disappeared when Cuban dictator Fidel Castro came." As a Cuban, Kid Chocolate was revered by the New York Hispanic community, and he also won the admiration of boxing fans throughout the United States. In a pictorial history of boxing, Nat Fleischer wrote, "Kid Chocolate, the Cuban bonbon, was a truly finished ringman. He was an excellent boxer, with an abundance of ring skill and a good puncher." Kid Chocolate's career also provided inspiration for boxers who came after him, including famed fighter Joe Louis. Before he became a boxer, Louis was considering a musical career as a violinist, but when a friend told him how much sardinas made from one fight, he put his violin aside and took up boxing. Sugar Ray Robinson was also a fan of sardinas. On the International Boxing Hall of Fame website, Robert Cassidy quoted Cuban journalist Fausto Miranda, who said, "Sugar Ray Robinson was a great admirer of Kid Chocolate. No other man, no other Cuban, did in the ring what Chocolate did. For style, he was the best. Fancy, fancy, fancy." Boxer Archie Moore, like Louis, was inspired by the amount of money Kid Chocolate made by fighting. Dave Kindred reported in the Sporting News that Moore once said, "I suppose I liked him because his name sounded so sweet. Most of all, the money intrigued me." Moore also noted that Kid Chocolate once made $2,500 for one fight, a very large amount for the time. Kid Chocolate died in Cuba in 1988. According to Bergow, his death was announced on Cuban state radio, but no details were provided regarding the cause of his death or whether or not he had any survivors. He was buried in a cemetery designated for significant Cubans, and a boxing stadium in Havana was named in his honor. In 1994, in recognition of his achievements, Kid Chocolate was inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame.
Wow, man. Kid Chocolate, boy. What a career, what a life, boy. He lived the high life, and consequently people around him took advantage of that. What a game guy, man. Like, to come where he came from, Havana, to come over to America, to make his name for himself. I tell you, that's impressive. You know, a young kid, didn't even know too much about boxing. As you heard, Sugar Ray Robinson and them guys, they study him. Obviously Joe Louis heard about him as well, and all the greats at the time. And obviously, like most guys in them time, they live a high life, and near the end they kind of end up in poverty. But he lived a courageous life, and long remember will be Kid Chocolate, man. And that's why he's on the list, Caribbean's greatest fighters of the decade, man. I hope you guys enjoy this, and I'll catch you on the next one.
DJ Boxing Live here. DJ Boxing Live here.
Buster Douglas knocked him out. Buster Douglas, the fat pump, the legend.
Yo, this is Chris Caban, chilling with my man EJ Boxing Live, one of the hottest, dopest boxing channels on YouTube. Check him out.
The boxing beats and runs on the EJ Live YouTube channel.
And Bastille was the number 10 rating contender, and he had never been knocked down. And Sonny destroyed his mouth. Bastille lost most of his teeth, basically with one or two left hooks.
Oh shit, boy! What was look at kids sleeping like Manny Pacquiao?
DJ Boxing Live here. DJ Boxing Live here.